At ShopRite, we've taken our already low prices and we've locked them in so you can save on your faves. Family packs of Bowl and Basket boneless chicken breasts are only $1.99 per pound. Check out locked-in prices at ShopRite. Excludes Brooklyn, Bronx, and Queens locations.
Welcome to the #1 podcast covering Michigan State basketball. The Final Four is not on the schedule. Join Rod and me, Eric, as we dive deep into the Spartans to get you prepared for every game. Subscribe today for in-depth recruiting updates and fantastic interviews with today's important college basketball personalities like Robbie Hummel.
Thank you for having me. I have listened to your guys' podcast numerous times on drives throughout any Midwestern Big Ten city. So I am big fans of your guys' work.
Jay Billis.
And next time, hey, if anybody in Michigan wants a December tea time, call me. You wimps won't show up, but I'll be there. I'll be there and play in the cold. And Izzo will be in front of the fire with hot chocolate.
Coaches Thomas Kelly.
Oh, no problem. Glad to be back, man. Glad to be back.
Mike Garland.
You just can't sit there and trade twos for threes. You can't do it. You're going to lose. Coming down the stretch, you're going to lose.
And more. You won't find better coverage of Spartan hoops than you will get here. For both the casual and hardcore fan, come along as we take you for a green and white ride. Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod, here to talk about MSU's upcoming game against the Wisconsin Badgers to tip off Big Ten play. Thanks to everyone for entering the Beat Rod contest. Purdue was the popular choice, not surprisingly, to win the Big Ten. I kind of wonder how all those folks feel after Purdue dropped its first game in Evanston. Anyway, special thanks to Richard Wagner, who subscribed to support the show on Substack. Thanks a ton, Richard. We really appreciate it. Also, we appreciate all of you who helped make this show possible at the Scott Skiles level, and especially Bill Church, Chad Hickey, Brian O'Donnell at the Mateen Cleaves level, and Adam Walzak, Dan Rankin, Doug Robinson, James Benton, Jim L., Mark Reynolds, Michael Bosnick, and Scott Driscoll, all at the Draymond Green level. If you're in the giving spirit and want to help keep the lights on the old show, head on over to tffinots.com/support to get the links necessary to click on. Okay, Rod, as I alluded to, Big Ten's looking a little less certain than it did before play began with #1 Purdue drop. Go ahead.
I think that you can say that about everybody everywhere. Mm-hmm. You know, the team that probably has the best case for being, you know, I think they are ranked #1, right? Is Arizona. Yeah. But I don't feel like Arizona is some unbeatable juggernaut. They're a nice team for sure, but I mean, Michigan State, for all their inconsistencies, probably should have beat them.
Yeah, they certainly could have.
You know?
I mean, they had a reasonable chance to.
Yeah, I mean, they were up 3 with, they were right there.
Yeah, well.
And so that tells you all you need to know. There really is not a dominant team. And you look around the landscape of the country, and then you look at the Big Ten. If anybody really thinks they're dialed in yet to how this thing's going to shake out, they're kidding themselves. And that includes Purdue. I do not think. Now, it'll be interesting. You know, Northwestern obviously we talked about this last year, and they did it again in pretty much exactly the same way. They have a formula that they could play with their personnel that really gives Purdue fits. They basically force turnovers with their guards, like they forced 17. Mm-hmm. And even though Edey had a lot of points, they still are going to make the game. I think this is the way I put it on Spartan Mag. If you can force turnovers and turn at least a lot of the game into a referendum on Purdue's three-point shooting, you've got a shot. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what Northwestern did. And then, of course, their guards had to make enough offensive plays, which they did. Boo-booey. Yeah. Now, are there a bunch of teams in the Big Ten that are equipped to do the same thing that Northwestern did? I don't know. But this idea, once again, people getting out over their skis with, you know, Purdue as a juggernaut, that they're vulnerable. They have vulnerabilities. And I was very dubious about whether they had adequately addressed them. And right now, it looks to me like that's an open question. So, yeah, the league right now. I will freely admit, I do not have any kind of sense of what we're likely to see.
I don't think anyone could know.
I think it's too early. Yeah. I think it's too early. And there's just been way too much inconsistency.
Yeah, I think the inconsistency and the vulnerabilities that all the teams have, which is what we were discussing at the preseason shows, with for all the different teams. There are a lot of unknowns, just like there was last year, and it makes every game compelling. You don't really know how things are going to work out. You think you might know, but you don't really have any idea.
And I think that maybe the one difference between what we said in the preseason and right now is I felt in the preseason, okay, but Michigan State and Purdue should be separated from the pack. And I include Purdue in this. I don't think Purdue has been great this year. Even take the Northwestern game out of it. I've seen them play. They're not, Edie is Edie, but I don't see it. I don't see it with that team. As an elite team, they're obviously a good team, but there's a difference there, and we know Michigan State hasn't been close to what we thought they would be. So right now, you can throw the 14 in a sack. It's going to sort out. We're gonna see. And to be fair to Purdue, I would still expect them, obviously, to be a contender. I don't think they're not gonna finish 8th. Are they gonna win it? I don't know. I didn't pick them to win it, and I feel okay about that. Now, I don't feel as good about Michigan State being the team that does it right now, but there's time for that to change. 25 years of history that says things can change. So we'll see. But it gets real with this one. I mean, just a real quick thought before we get into Wisconsin on the MSU side of things. I do think that it's an annual exercise in amnesia for a lot of Michigan State fans when we talk about November and December and people start losing their minds about losses taken at this time of year. And I think it's obvious. If Tom Izzo really cared about wins and losses as a bottom line at this time of year, he wouldn't schedule the way he does. He schedules the way he does for a reason. And that's to get a level check on his team, to attempt to determine strengths and weaknesses. I think that's the purpose,
Yeah. But
now that we have conference games at this time of year, that is a different deal. And so as much as I try to be level-headed about the non-conference and what it all means, which is fundamentally not a massive, massive amount other than giving you learning opportunities, conference games are a different story. So I think it gets real for a sec here with these two games. These two games are more important than Arizona was. As much as people probably don't want to hear that, it's true.
Yeah.
From a Michigan State perspective, they matter more. So that's where we are.
Yeah, and I think, you can even back up and say, well, it probably doesn't matter as much when it comes to seeding for the NCAA, right? A win against Arizona is probably worth more than beating Wisconsin and Nebraska together. But when it comes to the hanging banners, right, beating Arizona really doesn't gain you much, but you get a lot more winning the Big Ten.
And I wanna speak to that seeding thing for a second too. I mean, that's always the response. And I'm sorry, folks, you're going to have to put up with some issues that I'm having with a cough, but we'll try to get through it. That's usually the response is, well, these games matter a lot for seeding purposes. And sure they do.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That's where your seeding is really in large part earned, is what you do in big non-conference games, or at least it's a significant component. But you only have to look back at last season's tournament to see, I think, in this current environment, how little seeding matters anymore. What were the seeds of the Final Four teams?
UConn was a 4.
There wasn't a one seed to be found.
Nope.
So
nope.
I don't think, and we go on and on about this, but I think the portal it's introduced a randomness to this that I don't think was quite there the way it is now.
Yep.
And so, no, do I think it's life or death that you got to be a top 2, top 3 seed to have a great chance? No. Last year showed you that's the case.
Yeah. And to your point earlier too, I think it's pretty clear that there's not an elite team where you're just like, well, you don't want to run into, Kentucky or Memphis or something. And so if that's the case, it is going to be just like, it'll be a crapshoot when you get to the tournament. Who's hot, who's playing well, who's not hurt, those sorts of things come in, and the matchup's dependent. All right. Well, let's talk about the Badgers then. So Michigan State hosts the Badgers for the tip-off on Tuesday night. Badgers are 6-2, coming off a really big win over number 3 Marquette at home. They've also just annihilated Virginia on a neutral site, but also took a couple double-digit losses to Tennessee and Providence, and the Tennessee game I know was at home. So
exactly,
interesting. The Badgers are different this year. I think just like we'd say with Michigan State, I think they're doing things differently. They're not fantastic in turnovers percent. They're number 93, which is way less than what they usually are. But they're also top 30 in offensive rebounding percentage. And last year they were 338th, which is just about last place. They're not shooting the three very well, only 30%, although it's better than Michigan State's. But been very good inside the arc. They get to the line a lot more than they have in the past, where they're now inside the top 100 for free throw attempts over field goal attempts. And on defense, they generate a lot of turnovers, which is not usually their mark. They're number 44th in development generating turnovers, but they also foul a lot more, probably goes hand in hand with that. And then they're solid as usual in defensive rebounding. So different profile, but same pesky kind of team in general.
It's a very weird thing. I don't know how to grasp what's going on with them. The turnover thing is actually not based on steals, which is why I think it's probably not sustainable. Mm-hmm. They are generating, the vast majority of their turnovers are not coming via steals. You're relying on opponents' mistakes more than anything you're doing.
Right.
The offensive rebounding is mind-blowing to me. This is something, offensive rebounding is something Wisconsin never, ever, 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 ever does. And as you said, last year, 338. That's normal for Wisconsin. If you think about how they've played since Bo Ryan got there, it's always, you don't send guys to the offensive boards, you prioritize floor balance, and that's it. Well, it's been a totally different deal. And it's two guys. It's Tyler Wall and Stephen Kroll. Between them, 50 offensive rebounds so far.
Wow.
That's a crazy number. And it's just those two guys. Nobody else is really doing anything beyond what you would normally expect from a Wisconsin player. So I don't know if that's going to be sustainable over the course of the whole season, but over 8 games, it's been a factor. They don't shoot real well from deep. They're much better inside the arc. The turnovers are not crazy bad, but we're used to Wisconsin being like a top 20 team. So when they're nearly out of the top 100, that seems weird. Yeah. Defensively, great defensive rebounding team, which is normal for them. That's one thing that's there. We mentioned the turnovers. They're not actually great thus far in terms of field goal defense, and they're fouling more often than they usually do. They're usually a team that for how many years have people been frustrated by the way officials officiate Wisconsin, right? Now, it's gotten better since Ryan retired. Greg Gard doesn't get the same benefit of the doubt, but it's 8 games, so there's a ton of time for these things to change and maybe revert back to the mean, but this is a very different profile than you typically see from them. And it's a very different profile than they had last year. And it's almost all the same guys. So it's not like they had a big roster overhaul and, it's different players and they're playing differently. No, it's the same guys. So I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how good they are. I mean, we picked them to be, we pick them fourth or fifth, I think in the league, fourth. Yeah. So I'm not surprised that they've done some good things. Generally speaking, when Wisconsin has veteran players, they fare pretty well. And that's what they've got. This is a veteran team. It's been together for a while. You would expect them to play well. But, the people are making a lot of hay out of this Marquette win. I don't think Marquette's great. I know that they were ranked number 3, but I've seen them play a couple times, and I didn't think Marquette was great. I don't think they look as good as they did at the end of last year. So I don't know how much that win means. I think, Tennessee, as you mentioned, went into Cole and smacked them pretty good, which, I know Tennessee's taken some losses lately, but I'm still deeply impressed by that team. I don't know. I think there's a lot to discover about how good Wisconsin actually is. And this game will start to help us reveal that, I think. I think it's been some up and down.
Yeah. Quite honestly, you need to get about 10 games into the Big Ten season, which sounds like a kind of a cop-out, to really have a good feel for who everyone is at that point, right?
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
All right, well, let's start going through the starting lineup for the Badgers and the reserves. This segment is brought to you by the Brothers at Just Do Gutters. If you need gutter work, or think you might need gutter work, or really dislike cleaning out the leaves in your gutter, especially when it's 40 degrees and drizzly, why don't you hire someone to do it? That's all they do. The Brothers at Just Do Gutters do fantastic work. They took care of my gutters in my house, and now I no longer have water pooling by my house or a tree growing in my gutter like I did before. So they do, again, super work. They're all locally owned. You can head on over to brothersgutters.com. You can get a hold of Kurt on the west side of the state in the Grand Rapids area, or Greg in the Metro Detroit area. They will take care of you. 10% off if you mention Final Four when you get your estimate. They can replace, they can repair, they can clean out your gutters, whatever you need done. They've got a huge selection. The team comes in. They are very quick. They're going to get out in just about any sort of weather. For our house, they're doing it in February when it was raining. I couldn't imagine a worse time to be outside, but they were there doing all the work. So they are ones worth check out. And they sponsor the player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter, who Rod will identify as we go through the starters. So we'll begin with A.J. Storr, 6'6" transfer from St. Louis. He was expected to be a premium portal edition.
St. John's.
St. John, sorry. Yep. Was expected to be a premium portal edition, and he has been that so far, leading the team in scoring at 13.3 points a game on 39, 21, and 92 shooting. Athletic, and Wisconsin element, which they don't normally have, which is athleticism.
Yeah, every once in a while they get a guy on they're great teams. About 10 years ago, 10 years ago, they had Sam Decker.
Right.
As a wing. That was unusual to have a guy with that kind of athletic burst on the wing. And they've had a couple of other guys, but by and large, they don't have guys like Storrs. And he gives them a different element. Now, he's really struggling with the deep shot, but you're going to hear that, much as with Michigan State, you're going to hear those kind of numbers about a lot of these guys. What I think they like, though, is his athletic ability, his size and strength, so they can use him posting up. He can go off the dribble to some extent, and he can finish around the rim because of the size and strength and athletic ability he has. So they expected him to give them a different element offensively, and he is doing that. So from that perspective, been a great addition. They're just going to hope that he dials in the jumper a little better.
Yeah. I mean, the guy shoots 92% from the line, so you suspect there's probably a little better shooting percentage there as well. So next would be Chucky Hepburn, 6'2" junior point guard, doing pretty well this season. He's averaging a little under 11 points a game on 43, 27, and 80 shooting, leading the team in assists with 3 a game, and has a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio.
Yeah, he's just steady. He's also their leader in steals, which is not a huge part of what they do, but worth mentioning. He's another guy, though, is Chucky Hepburn a better shooter than that? Yeah, we know that. We've seen him do it, prove it for 2 years. So just as with Michigan, this goes to show you Michigan State's shooting woes are not exclusive to them. This happens to teams. And just as I would expect, Tyson Walker and Jaden Akins to shoot their way out of it, I figure Chucky Hepburn's probably going to shoot better.
Yeah.
But he's, if you remember, there were strong rumors that he was going to transfer out last offseason. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he didn't was a big deal. And he's a big deal in terms of this team's success and their potential, because you have a veteran point guard who's been through it. And that's a big positive for them.
Well, next thing you're going to tell me is that other teams have foot injuries on their players too, not just Michigan State.
Yep.
Next would be Max Klesmit, 6'4" junior. Had a big game against Marquette. He's averaging 8.6 points a game on 45, 36, and 93 shooting.
Yeah, and he's kind of doing the same thing that he did for them last year. He's a nice piece to have, good defensive player, gives them a little bit of offensive burst. He had a big game in the win over Marquette. He's the kind of guy that, as in the Marquette game, every once in a while, you look up and he puts 20 on somebody. He's not going to do that regularly, but a nice piece to have, some physicality on the wing, which they've always liked to have guys who are a little bit bigger. But yeah, just a solid piece.
Next would be Tyler Wall, 6'7" senior, averaging 10.9 points a game, 5.6 rebounds a game, shooting 54% from the floor, and poor 61% from the line. He's, as you mentioned before, pulling down a lot of offensive rebounds, averaging almost 3 a game. And he's a player that Michigan State, because I think just last year and the year before, they only played Wisconsin once, both times, and both games he was out. So this will be the first time they've seen him in a couple years.
I think you're right. And look, he is another one of these guys that's sort of the epitome of what Wisconsin's program has been, right? Comes in with very little advanced hype and just works and gets better. And eventually you look up and you got a guy who's a very good player. And that's what he is. He's not perfect. He has never managed to figure out the jump shot. And that's this in this era of stretch fours, when you have a four who can't shoot it all from deep, that's noticeable. But he's a standard issue Wisconsin player in that he's very clever in the post. The offensive rebounding is, he's been able to do that a little bit, but this is crazy, what he's done thus far. And he's a nice versatile player. He can make passes for other people. He's just very, very solid. The jump shooting limits him a little bit. The free throw shooting is not great either.
Yeah.
But other than that, he's off to the kind of start you would have expected.
Yeah, I think it's probably safe to say he's not a great shooter from the line or from
right.
deep. So finally, Stephen Kroll, 7-foot senior, having a good season so far. He's averaging 11.5 points a game, almost 8 rebounds a game, shooting 63-60, although that's a very small volume, only 5 3-point attempts.
Right.
And 68% from the free throw line. A lot of offensive rebounds, averaging better than 3.5 a game.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's these two guys, but especially Kroll. Wall, if you told me, he's going to average almost 3 offensive rebounds a game in the early going, I said, all right, I can see that. Kroll's never done this. And to be averaging that many offensive rebounds is crazy for him. He's another kind of standard issue Wisconsin big man. I think the 3-point shooting obviously is a very low volume thus far. He's what they draw up for their big men, more or less. They say he's gotten a little bit stronger this year, so that's helping as well. But just a great start. I think if you look at his overall game thus far, you'd be hard pressed to say, well, we wanted a little more out of him. I think he's been a decent, solid, good player for them for a couple of years now. But this is clearly another step forward this season.
Now moving on to reserves, beginning with John Blackwell, 6'4" freshman, played at Brother Rice. He's averaging 9 points a game and 3.1 rebounds a game in only 17 minutes, shooting 50, 50, and 86. Quite a pickup.
Yeah. John Blackwell, I was reading today, and I can't remember, I don't think this was consensus. This was one of the services, had him rated outside of the top 250 nationally. Neither Michigan State nor Michigan got involved. He committed to Wisconsin pretty early, if I remember correctly. So there might have been more movement if he had waited around, but he was on a Brother Rice team that was pretty balanced, and he never dominated for them. But there was a feeling, I had heard this from people who pay attention, high school kids in the state, that it wasn't shocking. Let's put it this way. I'm not shocked that he's helping. If you had said 9 points a game and shooting the way he is, that's surprising. Mm-hmm. I thought his contributions this year would be more, he's a decent athlete. He's got decent size. So I thought, well, he could help a little bit defensively, maybe get some garbage points here or there. But he has played way better than that. And it looks like it looks like they got a steal. He comes from good bloodlines. His dad, some of our older listeners may remember his dad, Glenn Blackwell, who was from Highland Park, very good player at Illinois. So that's also a reason why it's not shocking. But I think he's been, even with that said, I think he's been a pleasant surprise, the level at which he's played.
Yeah, and I think you had nothing but nice things to say about him during our preview show, too, to start the season. So, but again, like a little bit more than what you expected. So next we go to Connor Sejan. So he was a really great addition to the team as a freshman last year, but he's been having a rough, well, I don't know if it's a sophomore slump, but he's definitely had trouble getting out of the gate. 6'4" guard, averaging only 2.6 points a game in 8 minutes. He's only shooting 31, 18, and 100. And last year, that's about half what he was last year. Last year he shot the three at 36%. So, and he was a starter last year. So he's getting back from injury. So maybe that's a bit a little tougher, especially for a guy like him who relies on his shot.
That seems to be the problem. He had a back injury, and so he's been trying to work his way back in, and it just hasn't come thus far. And if you remember Sejan from last year, he was a problem.
Yeah, he was good.
This was a guy who could take and make shots, needed some work defensively, but had the makings of a very, very good player, and it just has not been able to happen thus far. Now, plenty of time for that to change, but they also don't need him as much. One of the nice things about Blackwell coming on so fast is they can be patient.
Yeah,
with a Sejan, and adding AJ Storr. It's changed the dynamic some, so they're not suffering from this, at least not yet.
Nolan Winter will be next at 6'11", freshman, averaging 2.4 points a game and 2.3 rebounds a game, playing about 9 minutes. So he'll obviously be backing up for Stephen Kroll. He's shooting 47, 29, and 60.
And this happens with Wisconsin. They added 2 big men this year. It was Nolan Winter and then a kid named Gus Yarden, who is not playing. And Gus Yarden needed some time to rework his body. I think that was clear. But he was a very impressive high school recruit and much more highly regarded. But he's not playing, and Nolan Winter is. And Nolan Winter has actually been pretty productive in the early going, which is a rare thing at Wisconsin for a freshman big. I think anybody who follows the sport even semi-closely knows that the pattern at Wisconsin is young bigs usually take some time in that program to develop. Yeah. They'll redshirt them frequently, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact he's been able to contribute as a true freshman and be reasonably productive, that's a good sign.
Next would be 6'7" junior Carter Gilmore. He's averaging 1.7 points a game and 2.1 rebounds a game in about 12 minutes, shooting 56% from the floor and 67% from the line.
Again, kind of a standard issue type at Wisconsin. I think Carter Gilmore was a walk-on initially. He's not the most talented guy, but he just gets in there. He's physical. He's got some good size, decent mobility. He's willing to mix it up. Not making huge contributions statistically, but he's another piece to that rotation puzzle. And, they've won a lot of games with guys like that as an 8th or 9th man.
Finally, Kamari McGee, 6' junior guard, has played in all the games so far this season, averaging 1.4 points a game in about 9 minutes, shooting 43, 33, and 67.
Yeah, and the shooting's on very low volume, obviously.
1 for 3, I'm sure, for 3.
Yeah. But look, he's the guy who's going to play, the 8 or 9 minutes a night at the point that Chucky Hepburn needs to rest. That's basically his role. Just hold the fort down. They don't ask a lot of him.
Right. And so who would you select as the Brothers Just Two Gutters player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter?
I get, because of circumstances, I'm not going to go with AJ Storr. I'm going to go with Tyler Wall.
Yeah. Their utility knife.
And we'll get to why when we turn to the keys.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So before we get to the keys of the game, just a reminder for another great sponsor of the show, Nudge Printing. Nudge Printing is a great place to get your Spartan apparel. and other collegiate apparel from the state of Michigan, outside of the University of Michigan, you can head on over to nudgeprinting.com. There you can find their wide selection of shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts. They've got wall stickers. They've got stickers for computer, stickers for your cornhole, all kinds of things. Any kind of screen printed thing, you can probably find it at the Nudge Printing. You can go to nudgeprinting.com and at checkout, type in Final Four just as one word, and that will give you 20% off your order. Gabe and his wife, Brittany, do a great job there. Great Spartan alums. They were instrumental in the Spartan Strong effort in helping the shooting victims at Michigan State. They are people definitely worth supporting, and you get super high quality screen printed apparel, which I have a bunch and love it, and my family loves it. It's their favorite stuff. So check out Nudge Printing at nudgeprinting.com. So we'll begin with 5 keys of the game. We'll start with the boards. Obviously, as you mentioned before, Wisconsin actually rebounding offensively really well, which is not typical. And so, obviously Michigan State has been a couple times struggling a little bit on the defensive end. So this is obviously a place you don't want to give a team extra opportunities to score.
Absolutely. I think it really, it's an area you're not used to worrying about with Wisconsin, but you're going to have to in this game. And it's 2 guys, as I said. Wall and Kroll together have grabbed 50 offensive rebounds. I didn't do the math, but I don't think the rest of their team combined has that many. So you got to worry about those 2 guys. And that's going to mean that there's going to be a real importance to what guys like Mahdi and Carson Cooper and Malik Hall and Cohen Carr, what those guys are able to do. Because they're going to have to check those guys out.
For sure. And so then that brings us to the second key to the game, Malik Hall. So it sounds like he was sick a little bit over the weekend. And so, he's an obvious matchup. He's kind of like the mirror image of Tyler Wall, except I'd say he could shoot better. He's just not this year, but he generally can shoot a lot better than Tyler.
Yeah, Izzo said this morning that it's been tough, but as of this morning, they think he'll go. They just don't know how much they'll get from him. Very important, because if you don't get a lot from Malik, then you're going to have to mix and match. And Izzo said they may end up going with Mahdi and Carson together, which I think is possibly something that can work at least defensively. I don't know about the offensive end. Yeah. So that's a possibility. Obviously, Cohen Carr. I don't think you're going to see Xavier Booker in this game. I don't think he's ready for what guys like Wall could throw at him. I think that would probably go poorly. But the best possible solution would be Malik being able to play like at least 20 minutes of high-quality basketball. And let's remember, Malik Hall's played some good games against Wisconsin in recent years. I didn't go back to check the stats, but I just know from memory, he's had some very, very good games against them in recent years. Yeah, I think that's an important factor. What kind of Malik does MSU get?
Third key to the game, the start. And we've talked about this a number of times because it's been a bit of a problem for Michigan State. They've had a lot of slow starts this year. And so, this is Big Ten play. There's a good team. You can't start out in a hole every game and expect to win the majority of those games.
Absolutely. It's as simple as that, right? You can't keep putting yourself in a hole.
And the fourth key to the game, gangs that couldn't shoot straight. So we have both teams that inexplicably cannot hit threes this year. And especially for Michigan State with a bunch of players who normally are 40+%, really, really struggling.
And so my thinking here is both of these teams have struggled so much that if either one actually does have a nice shooting night, that could be a big difference maker. And I don't usually do this kind of thing, but I'm going to go out on a limb. I just have this feeling that Michigan State is set to have a breakout game. Now, that doesn't mean it gets sustained. Beyond that, I don't mean that all of a sudden the issue is fixed. I just have this feeling that they're going to come out and shoot the ball well against Wisconsin. But if it happens either way for either team where they shoot 45%, that could be a big difference maker.
Well, we'll hope that Michigan State gets out of their funk. It'd be nice to see.
I have a feeling that we're from Tyson Walker and Jaden Akins. I think that's what we're going to see. They're overdue. And it just feels that way to me. We'll see if my gut's right.
And the fifth and final key to the game is one that you've never heard before, AJ.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's pretty simple, right? If they don't get a high-level AJ Hoggard, this team's ceiling is much lower than we'd all like to see it. So, you know, he in fits and starts, he's maybe started to show in the last 2 games some signs that maybe he's starting to figure it out, getting downhill more, getting to the rim more, drawing more fouls, doing all of those things. Still way too much inconsistency, especially defensively, I think. But it's Big Ten play. It's time for him to step up and be the guy I think everybody expected.
Yeah. Senior point guard, right? This is what you expect, Michigan State. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there since we appreciate you soldiering on through here, getting through this with illness.
I feel better than I sound, trust me.
That's always the worst part of colds and stuff, when you've actually sound better. People shirk away from you. You're like, no, actually, I don't think I'm contagious. I'm much better now than I was a couple days ago.
Yep.
So again, a quick reminder to check out Nudge Printing at nudgeprinting.com. Another great sponsor is Brothers Just Do Gutters. So if you need gutter work for your house or business, check them out. You can find out contact information for Greg and Kurt, your podcast player below. I guess the last thing is, we don't expect Kohler. You said you're not expecting Booker. Do you expect the starting lineup to be similar to it was the last game, meaning Trey Holloman starting over AJ, or do you think AJ is going to be reinserted into the starting lineup?
No, I mean, we talked about this, right? That based on the way Trey Holloman played, I don't see why you make a change.
That's my thought too, yeah.
You know, but we'll see.
Okay, and then one last little bit, which is non-basketball related. I will actually not be at the game, and so I had a listener who reached out. I just want to mention that. So I will be at a concert for my late son, Andy, who passed away 5 years ago, and so we're having a memorial concert here in Grand Rapids. But we will come back with some post-game analysis, so don't worry about that. But instead of closing the show with the usual song, I'm going to close just like I did last Christmas with my son Andy singing a solo Away in the Manger in 2017 Christmas concert. So until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go Green.
The #1 selling product of its kind that delivers subtle, predictable results. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.